Everyone wants to take their business, their skills, to the next level. Small and mid-sized business owners have exceptional insight into how to do this. They endure and thrive because they find ways to overcome the challenges that come their way, and they can teach us valuable lessons to apply to our own companies and lives. Stephen Nooner, founder and owner of Alkali, a company with a unique process that helps businesses more effectively buy and manage their insurance programs. And Bob Gibbons, builder of Riata Commercial Realty, a real estate advisor and tenant advocate, are two prominent Metroplex businessmen who, along with their weekly guests, will ask their and your probing questions, finding impactful solutions that will help you reach for the next level. Here are your hosts, Stephen Nooner and Bob Gibbons.
Welcome to the Next Level, conversations that propel your business.
Is that part of our new tagline?
That's our new tagline.
I didn't realize we'd changed it.
This is Stephen Nooner.
And Bob Gibbons. Thanks for being with us this week. We have another great guest today, Colin Sanburg with United. Now I'm screwing up, Stephen. Thanks a lot. It's catching. Unified Supply. He's the owner and CEO. Unified Supply is a very interesting company. Stephen, have you ever lost your luggage at the airport? Lost?
Unfortunately, yes.
Okay, it's not Colin's fault. It's somebody else's fault. But if they called Colin, that may not have happened because he maintains a parts system for the baggage delivery systems, and they custom design them. They have parts for every kind of manufacturer that's out there, and they have the largest supply of parts of anybody. It's pretty amazing.
Awesome.
So they serve airports nationwide. And we're excited to have you as our guest today, Colin.
Thanks for having me.
Welcome. And Bob forgot to mention this is your friend, right?
Well, yeah. Full disclosure. So Colin is a client of mine, and I'm really. He may not be after this is over. And if you want to learn more about his company, please go to unifiedsupply.com.
Great job.
And in fairness, I always say as a disclaimer, if your bag gets lost at the airport, it's human error, 100% of the time.
100%. I'm pretty sure that I believe that, actually.
But
yeah. We like to start off the show with wisdom of others, and we have a quote from you today. It says, "Doubt kills more dreams than failure ever will," by Sue. What does that mean to you?
Well, it's one of my favorite quotes. I came across it, and it's kind of that ultimate just go for it quote. And, I really think that's a powerful thing. You hear that one of people's biggest fears is kind of that fear of ending their life with regret. Mm-hmm. And I think this is the type of quote that hopefully pushes you forward to avoid that.
It kind of makes me think of the old adage of, C students start companies and the A and B students work for them.
Yeah.
Because they're too smart to know it can't be done.
Yeah.
And the C students I don't know if it can be done or not, so they just go do it.
That's true.
And, it's that doubt thing.
Yep.
Well, early on when we were starting our company, one of the books that was recommended to me that really had a big impact on the growth of our business is a book by John Maxwell called Failing Forward. Mm-hmm. And they kind of talked about that as it's the raw material to learn and grow. Yep. And so
absolutely
fail often, fail fast, fail forward.
Yep. And we all have those doubts.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, realistically, we all live that every day. It's just whether or not you give counsel to that and let that dominate your thoughts, or whether you push through it and just kind of set that aside and go for it.
So one of the things that you told us that people may not know about you is that you were kind of a troublemaker in school.
I was a bad kid.
Were you a C student?
I aspired to be a C student. It was bad. Yeah, I had a lot of the kind of the immaturity that I think a lot of boys have, but in me it manifested in really questioning that authority, and specifically with school. Is this worksheet really a good use of my time? So I would always call it monkey work. You could train a monkey how to do this, just kind of go through the chapter, look for the bulleted or the bolded words, and that's the answer to the quiz. And so I would just prove that it was stupid by not doing it.
But my question now is, has that attitude helped you or hurt you as an entrepreneur?
Well, ultimately, I think it gave me a fire. I was an underperformer for a huge part of my life, and that's given me a real chip on my shoulder. What I've come to realize is there's no amount of success that's going to make that go away. I'm going to have that forever. And there's good parts to that, and there's bad parts. Realistically, it's just who I am. So I kind of push through it and say it does cause me to refuse to just accept things, and that's kind of what the quote was about. We're not a company that allows for bad processes or dumb ideas to rule the day just because it's the thing somebody thought about once upon a time, and we keep rolling with that. We question everything, and I think part of that is just kind of my personality.
Yeah, I would think being a troublemaker is actually a real asset when it comes to business. One, you're questioning authority, you're challenging the status quo. Why has it been done that way all the time? I mean, who cares? I mean,
Yeah.
our young nooner here, he's a disruptive guy. He's disrupting the insurance industry and the way they do business. So
We make everyone read, in fact, when they come into our business, because you don't think disruption and insurance are like two things that sound, like
Sure.
attracts those type of people. We have everyone, though, read Who Moved My Cheese. One of the things I think I recall you mentioning before was that you're not going to just stick with the dumb idea because it's there. And so a lot of times I tell people, it's like, hey, I want to fight and let the best idea win, not
Yep.
my idea.
Absolutely.
all right, well, let's talk about Unified Supply. So give us the journey. How did you get there? What were you doing before you got there? And
You grew up thinking about, hey, I want to be in the conveyor.
Yeah, absolutely.
I want to make sure no bags ever get lost. That's my dream.
That's right. You have to dream big, right?
Yeah, exactly.
That's kind of one of the things we say. We always say no one ever grew up dreaming of being in this business. So everyone has a weird story of how they got into it. For me, it was a family member's business, and I knew I wanted to do, and I actually read a magazine article once upon a time that inspired me to start my own business. And to me, the most direct path to get there was find the person closest to me who owned a business and learn from them exactly what it really takes. And so once I got into that, a couple years in, I was pretty crucial part of the business, and was really pushing to make some major changes that once they came through, it made more sense for me to carry that forward than the founder. So that was where the transition happened. That was a little over 10 years ago, and I bought the business outright about 3 years ago.
Congratulations.
Yeah, I mean, so coming into a business that's owned by a family member, and then talk to us a little bit about that.
It's a complicated
Conflict.
dynamic.
Yeah, and it's got to be.
It is.
Especially when you have different ideas.
And Stephen used the word argue for the best idea. That takes on a different meaning with a family business. But yeah, it
Bleeds
was
into Thanksgiving.
Yeah, exactly. It bleeds over into the rest of your life. And I always say, small business is a very complicated thing. We talked about before, I've got small children. And so now thinking about being kind of the elder person in that family business someday, and it's a complicated question. My wife and I have debated about that many times, whether that's something we'd really want our children to follow, because it complicates relationships that otherwise would be clean. And so whether it's with parents or other family members, that's a real challenge. For me, that's just, again, kind of the path I ended up on, and I'm happy about it. But at the same time, it's not to say there are no regrets in that area.
What was the major change? You said there were some ideas. Like, what would you say is the biggest idea or change you wanted to make?
Well, we were making the mistake a lot of small businesses make. We were trying to be a tiny version of a bunch of really big companies, and we didn't have a niche. When I looked at our business, I've been there for a couple years, there was one specific area, and it was those parts. So our business is really, it's selling parts to existing airports and existing carousels and types of equipment. And then there's a different side of the business that's all about putting in a brand new system. So like DFW is going to put in Terminal F, and that's going to have a giant, probably $30-50 million system put into it. And so all the big companies are wired around that mode of business, which makes all the sense in the world when you're a big company. When you're smaller, there's a huge amount of risk associated with that type of business. And so for us, I could prove on paper that the parts business was profitable. It was just tiny. And I really wanted to push that as kind of the future of the business. And at the time, the founder wasn't interested in that, and that just wasn't what they had been pushing. And so we got into some really risky deals, and it almost killed the company on multiple occasions. And so it wasn't an ultimatum in the sense of I was trying to make a power move to get the company. It was really like, I'm not going to just be here and help participate in this thing going down in flames. We're either going to make this change, which I really believe will be successful, or I'm just going to have to, this will be my and do something different.
And so is it that the bigger companies, they just weren't, that's just pocket change them, or I mean, what's the?
Yeah, it's, the entire business. I really believe as a company, you have to kind of have one core focus. You have to have one thing that you're really striving for. And so those big companies, it's all about the new big project. And so if you're just trying to buy replacement parts, or you have an existing piece of equipment that's struggling, that's not, their answer to that every time is, let's just replace it. Let's just rip it out and replace it.
Right.
Wow.
And so as you can imagine, the airline industry is doing a little better now, but especially back when I took over in 2006, 2007 was really the first full year. And in 2008, I mean, fuel went crazy right before the broader economy. And so it's not a fair proposition to leave the airport with every time, they've got a 5 or 10-year-old system. The systems have a similar lifespan to like an older car. They can go probably 20 years and they need a major refurbishment. And these other companies were saying after, say, 5, 10 years, they start to have their first signs of struggle. Well, let's just rip it out and replace everything. And so the answer ended up being, no, we're not going to do anything. And they would just let the asset get worse and worse. We tried to come into the scene and basically say, look, you have an alternative. We can help provide that alternative to you. And so that's really kind of what we made the core of our business about.
Now, your customer is the airport itself, correct?
Yeah, we had ultimately the airlines, the airport are kind of the end users. There's also maintenance companies. Sometimes there's a maintenance unit of an airline. Sometimes the airport handles that themselves. It really changes not only airport by airport, but sometimes terminal by terminal.
Really?
So yeah, DFW terminals A and C are handled by American because they exclusively use those. And then B and E are just kind of a mess of a ton of different airlines, smaller airlines, 1 or 2 gates. That's all maintained by the airport. And then Terminal D is kind of the Wild West a little bit because it's American is really kind of the dominant player in it, but it's actually owned by the airport. So again, even all 5 of those there's some differentiation there. And with Terminal F, who knows?
Are you doing completely different sales channels then with them? I mean,
yeah, there's always a national kind of overlay to most of our customers, unless it's just the airport. So the maintenance companies we deal with have a national, approach, and we're trying to hit them on the station level and nationally. And the same thing, obviously, with the airlines. You may know the guy from American at DFW, and that might be great, but you have no clue who the guy is at Miami, and he's the one who does all the buying. So it's trying to figure that, that whole spaghetti bowl of, complex relationships out. That's a huge part of the marketing.
So how do you serve airports from around the country from, here at your base in DFW?
Well, we have kind of that product first focus. So, we really understand the products, and there's not a local company near them that is going to support what we're doing. So we're kind of the hub, and we really, support all the different product lines, have the inventory, and are ready to go. And then we're just calling on those airports remotely.
I would think that would be, so you ship all this stuff, these parts
Correct.
to them,
Yeah.
to the maintenance company or whomever is
Absolutely.
going to be installing them.
Yep.
You do all that by air?
No, it's mostly, that would be convenient, but it's a lot more expensive. So again, we're trying to be a lower cost provider. So ground's the way to go.
Okay, cool.
you finally did it. You bought out your partner, and the business is all yours. One problem, though. What do you do next when you're in over your head? Stick around.
And now, Confessions of a Recovering Landlord.
This is Bob Gibbons with Riata Commercial Realty, and I am your recovering landlord. After 20 years as a landlord, I now use that experience only for the benefit of companies that lease or buy office buildings and warehouses. Today's confession: knowledge is power. We all negotiate from a position of power and strength, or at least we want to. In any negotiation, the party with the most knowledge probably has the upper hand. And landlords count on this being the case whenever you're negotiating a lease, because most landlords are professional real estate investors and they hire professional leasing agents and property managers. Landlords are in the market every day negotiating leases, while tenants probably only negotiate 1, maybe 2 leases every few years. So tenants feel outgunned. Don't let landlords have all the power. As a former landlord for 20 years, I understand how landlords think and what motivates them. So let me put that knowledge and experience to work on your side of the negotiation. To learn more, contact me at TexasTenantRep.com. Again, that's TexasTenantRep.com.
Have you started making plans to take your business to the next level in 2016? Hi, I'm Stephen Nooner, founder and CEO of Alkali. We have a trademark process called the Empowered Advantage that enables CEOs, business owners, and entrepreneurs to more effectively buy and manage their insurance. Before sitting down to make your plans for the new year, here are just a few things to consider. Would you say that you have an actual insurance strategy, one that you can articulate, or have you just purchased a policy here and there over the years? If you have an insurance strategy, was it discussed under the pressure of a renewal deadline or considered earlier in the year to avoid fire drill decision making? If your answer was no to either of these questions, then you may not have the right partner on your team. Visit alkaliservices.com to contact us and take the next step to a bigger and better future.
Hey, we're Reed and Heidi, co-founders of Fresh Bennies.
And we can tell you that being on the show here with Bob and Steven was neither fresh
Nor beneficial.
Welcome back, everyone, to The Next Level. We're here with our special guest, Colin Sanburg. If you want to learn more about Colin or his company, Unified Supply, please visit unifiedsupply.com.
So we've talked a lot about your parts business and how you really focused on that as your niche, but you know, it's been years since you took over. You've been growing and getting more stable and all the rest. So where does that take you now? I mean, do you stay in that niche? Do you branch out from that? Where do things go from here?
Well, what's great about that, so you're right, we are a lot more stable. Obviously, 10 years in, we've learned a lot of lessons, and we've grown that parts business. Again, it was tiny when we first made the switch to become parts focused. And what we did was we built kind of a stable foundation through that parts business. A lot of the big companies in our industry are typical project-based construction type companies where you take on a big job and you hope that you make it. And if you don't, the company's gone. And if you make it, you try and take a bigger job. Wow. And they just scale up that kind of stair-stepping. And that's really common in a lot of construction industries. And it's common in the project work in our business. What we realize is the lifestyle that creates for employees and just the financial hurdles involved are just too chaotic. It's not what we want our core business to be about. And so now we've built this core parts business. And what's great about that is we have the foundation to say, look, we're profitable with or without projects. We don't have to take the desperate, take the project at any cost type of mentality. Where we think we can add value to the customer, we'll look at a project. And when we can do that and we can do it profitably, we don't have to make, everything on one project, but where we can do it profitably, live to fight another day, live to support those customers. And that's actually, ironically, part of what built our parts business is that, the ditch on the side of the highway of baggage conveyors is kind of littered with these companies who went for the go big project or go home and they didn't make it.
Oh,
and
wow.
so they leave customers with no one left to support them. And so that's a big part of what we started as a company around. And so we don't want to just do a giant project and have it be our last hurrah. We really want to have our core business. And then we take projects, we'll take a handful of them a year that we know we can be successful and leave the customer really satisfied.
That's a game-changing type of mindset. You can't have more contrasting mindsets between that. We have we do a lot in the construction space, and you can tell the businesses that have matured to the point where they're not just bidding every deal, they're walking. And so to actually back into that, most of them learned it just by making a bunch of really painful mistakes, right?
Yeah, surviving the bad
surviving them. Yeah.
So as you've grown this, obviously there's been a lot of impacts to personnel.
Sure.
So talk to us a little bit about how you've managed personnel and getting stability there and et cetera.
Well, one of the things that was so challenging, we saw this mentality as a big systems business where if you get the big job, everyone's working 80 hours a week. It's just pure insanity. You're asking people to do things that now, especially as a father with young children, I would never be willing to do, nor would I ever ask someone to do that. They're working these hours. They're out on job sites for weeks at a time. It's just a total chaotic lifestyle. And this parts business was, it's a little overly stated to say it was 8 to 5, but it was more or less 8 to 5. We had a core of customers who appreciated us, and they were willing to reach out when they needed us on nights or weekends. But for the most part, day to day, it was really a pretty simple business model. And so we found that it was when the jobs wouldn't hit on the system side, then you've got people in these big companies walking around like zombies. They're just wondering if they're about to get laid off, wondering if they should go look for a job with a company who got the big project. It's just a nightmare scenario for stability and for employees. So as we got out of that, we really had to go through a big transition of kind of finding our footing. And eventually, one of the things I've most recently learned, I wish I had known 10 years ago, was about the power of your culture. And your company culture is everything. It exists whether you manage it or not. And so it's so powerful to be intentional about it. And as we've done that, it's amazing. It builds its own momentum, and you find that it attracts people who keep it going, and that makes it more powerful and better at attracting the right people. It just really kind of creates a life of its own, and it's exciting.
So what was it? I mean, was it a book? I mean, what inspired you to kind of, wow, this is important here?
Well, I've got a really wise consultant business coach that I work with. And one of the things that was really interesting, it was a simple exercise he wanted me to go through, but it sparked this entire, era of our company with our culture. He asked us, what is the feeling you want someone to have if they just walked in the door, they didn't know who you were or what you did, what would be the feel in the air? And he said, that's what the culture is. And so we went through and made a list of what those things were, and I believe there were 12 different things. And then he said, okay, now for your employees to create that, what are the standards for the employees? So we refer to it as our culture and standards, and we talk about it every single day. It's part of our ritual of our morning meetings. Somebody takes one of the 23 elements. They're the characteristics, basically, of what it means to be, an employee of Unified. And we go through them. And so it's been the scaling up of this concept to where now it's a huge part of our hiring process. It's the language we use to say something is going well or going poorly. It's a really powerful thing, but it didn't start out as this big deal. It just kind of organically grew.
Did you, were there people that were not, once you realized what you wanted the culture to be, were there people that just weren't going to be a fit for that?
Absolutely. And that's the hard part, right?
It is.
You have to be honest about that. And what's neat about the language we use, one of the things we used to do, a lot of businesses struggle with, is someone who's not living up to those standards. You chase it. I always say it's like a dog chasing his tail. It's like you're going around all these different examples where it's not right, but they always have that one excuse or that one explanation behind the examples. Once you have what we have now, which is this language behind saying, look, you're not being thorough. You're not being intentional. Those are words that are in our culture and standards. It gives us a theme to say that the problem, let's set aside the specific examples, which you might have excuses around. You're not taking ownership. And so those are things that have really empowered us, again, to find the right people. And what I find is the right people, they don't shy away from that at all. They're not paranoid they're going to be, blamed about something, or, they embrace that, because any of us who have had any job at any point in our life have all worked with someone who was loafing, somebody who just wasn't engaged and didn't really care. And that's what will run off the best people.
Or kill them.
So whenever you're hiring somebody new now, do you figure all this out through the interview process using all the right words, or do you have some other kind of assessment tool or something that helps you figure that out?
Well, it's shaped everything we do. So it's in our job post. We post our culture and standards. We talk about it right there. Then the first question we ask, we have kind of a weird hiring process, but we then ask people to call in and do a voicemail, basically. And the first question is, what interested you in the job? Now, the wrong answer is, hey, I'm moving to Grapevine, or, we know they're not interested in baggage conveyors, right? We can get that out of the way. So you have to get that answer. But the right answer is that, hey, I saw this job post, and this seems like the kind of company I want to work for. That tells me that they're interested in culture first. We can train skills. We know they're not going to understand anything about our industry, so that's just a given. What's great is when we bring them in with the right attitude. And so we talk about it in our first interview. One of the very first questions I ask them, we have the culture and standards on our conference room wall, and I point at it and I say, look, we care about all 23 of these. Tell me which 2 or 3 that really stand out to you. And that's a very telling question, because they're a wide variety of things.
Is snacks on the list?
No, snacks, perks, none of that made the list. Salary's not up there. We're trying to get to the heart of kind of who they are as a person. And so some people are going to say, hardworking and never settle. And other people are going to turn around and say, fun and high character. And so those are all things that are on the list, but it's a very telling question to ask. And if they're kind of nonchalant and don't really care about the answer, it tells us a lot about what their motivations are.
They're looking for a job.
Exactly.
How many interviews do they have before they get hired?
So we do the voice recording, then we do a group interview, which is actually multiple candidates and multiple people from our company.
Multiple candidates at the same time?
It's brilliant.
Wow.
And it really is. That's the most telling. Again, we're looking for culture fit there. We're not going to be able to get into your job-specific history, but we can ask what you think about certain things. And one of the most telling things I always tell candidates after, we kind of pull back the curtain after we've hired them on and explain to them what we were really looking for. One of the most telling things is when someone in that group interview gives another candidate credit for their answer. It tells you so much about being a team player, the way they're going to approach things, and the fact that they're confident enough to not try and always outshine everyone else. And so they start building. We've actually seen it where they start building on each other's answers, and it's a really powerful thing.
So you hire them all.
Well, we have hired two people out of we have hired two out of one interview, and that was kind of neat.
So, and one of the things I know you also mentioned that you guys have been working on is kind of a shift in focus on the sales.
Correct.
What are you guys doing differently there?
Well, that's one of the areas that I've had a lot to learn as a CEO. When I started with the company, sales wasn't my background. Really, none of it was my background. So I've had to kind of figure it out slowly as I went. The sales deal is, we're not self-promoters. We try to be just kind of good old-fashioned, be honest with our customers, be really straightforward. The hard part is because we're doing something a little different than most of the industry, people don't naturally know to look for that. And so they've got some big brand names in our industry, and we're not one of them. So we're really having to get that word out. And that's the biggest thing is I tell our salespeople, if you believe in what we're doing, if you're passionate about it, it's really just introducing this concept to people. They'll make their own decision. It's not about some sort of a hard sell and get out your credit card and let me close this deal. It's not that type. You
were 26 when you took over the business, and we alluded to this before we went on the break. What are the biggest insights? I mean, obviously you've come a long way.
Sure. Yeah, I would say the biggest insight is you got to learn every day. You have to get up. I'm very passionate about that. My latest kind of crazy thing is I listen to audiobooks at 2.5 times the normal speed.
Audible fan?
Audible, 2.5 times. Yeah. I can't quite make 3 work yet, but I'm working on it.
Alvin and the Chipmunks.
That's right. But just learn every day and be honest with yourself that you're not as good as you want to be. And if you kind of combine those two things together, it just creates this continuous flow that hopefully takes you in the long run where you want to go.
Well, thanks so much for being with us on the show today.
Thanks
we really appreciate it. For our listeners, please go to unifiedsupply.com to learn more about Colin and the company. And if you want to know more about the show, go to nextlevelshow.com and you can explore the archives of past guests. We had Terry Pham with Fat Straws, and he had a little interesting incident where he had 2 of his top managers marry each other.
Oh.
Create a little chaos in the company. Go find that one and listen to it. We'll see you next week.
Have a great week.
You have been listening to The Next Level, Conversations That Propel Business with Stephen Nooner and Bob Gibbons. Join us every Tuesday at 1:30 p.m. for more prolific conversations that will take your business to the next level.